Okay, greetings everyone. What a beautiful day. It's a little warm for my taste, but it's still beautiful. That sun is shining. And we've had a little bit of moisture down here in Southeast Missouri. So I know there's a lot of gardeners pretty happy. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're able to join us today. My name is Donna, of course, and down by the Cape Girardeau area. And we have lots of great information for you, like we always do. We love having those questions come in, so we have plenty of content to talk about. So definitely keep those questions coming in. On the map, I'll always share that map so everybody can see who the local horticulturist is in their area. Just take a look and see where you're at in the state and find that local name for your area. And then at any time during the month or during the year that you have horticulture questions, you can reach out to that person. If you're in an area where there's a vacant position, just reach out to the next person. We try not to draw any territorial lines. We love to help anybody and everybody. So Debbie has changed her name to Ask Your Questions Here. So Debbie will be taking those questions. So at any time you have a question throughout today, just go to Ask Your Questions Here. And put your question in the chat box. If we get close to the end of the session, make sure to put your email address in there too, so that we have a way to get back in touch with you if we don't get to you in time. Before we get going, we're going to do the weather report, and I'm going to turn it over to Tony.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And I think I have some good news today, and actually it'll be the most optimistic forecast I've given in quite a while, so it'll be there for folks to like. There is some thunderstorms and showers kicking up in southeast Missouri and southern Missouri as we speak. And on the screen, you're seeing two moving maps. All right, this one is, the bottom one is El Nino. They're showing you that El Nino is starting to kick in. And of course, now that it's finally getting settled in, I think we're going to see some changes come our way that are going to be good. And let's get to the garden hour forecast here, and let's talk about what's new. Of course, yesterday we saw that temperatures were in the 90s, and most places today will be in the 80s with cloud cover, but that heat dome that was over Texas and Oklahoma is gone, which is great. And I'm going to show you this map here, the dew points. The dew points are finally where they should be for this time of year, and that's the low 60s. The upper 60s, sorry, and low 70s. And of course, the last few weeks, those dew points have been way too low for this time of year. The pattern is finally what we call a progressive pattern, or a relatively normal pattern. So that's also a good sign. That just means that your jet stream is moving along, and that's what we want to see. We don't want those stationary patterns. Here's some maps for those of you who are curious as to how far down where precipitation we've been the last year. You can see on the very left, the last year, some places as much as 20 inches below normal. Since January 1st, the Ozarks and central Missouri are the worst at 9 to 12 inches below normal. And June was below normal for most of the state, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches below. And again, the drought monitor, just every week a little worse, but I think we're going to see some big improvement this coming week. So be ready. All right, the last few days of June were not so great. We kind of got even further behind precipitation wise, and that carries on for most of the state, as I showed you earlier. More than an inch in some of the major metro areas on I-70 and north and south, more than 2 inches. And again, the pattern is now a little bit more changeable, and that's good. So I'm going to kind of skip over this pattern here because it is a little bit changeable. And as we see, the storm track is there across the middle of the country, even though it's a little weaker, but that's good news. Here's what the pros are showing us for the next week. Check it out. All right, all I have is one word in there. Wow. As much as 3 to 4 inches of precipitation expected across southwest and southern Missouri, and even northern Missouri can expect to pick up an inch or so of precipitation. And that's if the models are right. Now, the models have been admittedly overdoing things for the last few weeks, but even if they're overdoing it by a factor of 2, this is good news. So there's the summer outlook again. That hasn't changed, so I'll skip that. But this is even better news. Look at the left-hand thing, the left-hand map, 6 to 10 day temperature outlook below normal. If you don't like the heat, like I don't like the heat, that's good news. And it's good news because it either means we're going to be cloudy, or at least the temperatures will be low, and that means that any rain that falls will not evaporate off immediately. So below normal temperatures, above normal precip. We've been waiting a long time for this. This is supposed to extend even right through to the later part of the month. All right. They have a little less confidence in the below normal temperatures, but still, that's good news coupled with those above normal precip. All right, I've been plugging these things for a while, so we'll let them go. And we'll get to the soil moisture to show you that if you look down about 3 feet, the soil moisture is pretty much okay along I-44 and south, but in the northwest part of the state, very, very dry. And we've had some improvement this week in soil moisture. Remember, the 8-inch soil profile last week showed a lot of dark colors over the US, over Missouri, a lot less of those, and even some good precip values along the Iowa border. So what's the forecast look like? Today, showers and thunderstorms developing. Some may be severe around the state. Will be in the mid 80s in the northern part of the state to low 90s in the southern part of the state. So the biggest threat with the severe weather is winds. Probably no hail, definitely no tornadoes. Tonight, some thunderstorms will be strong early and severe south of I-70, but temperatures will be cool. Above Route 36, you may even see upper 50s to near 60s, and then the mid 60s elsewhere. Tomorrow we'll see some clearing, highs in the upper 70s in the northern part of the state, 80 to 85 elsewhere. Thursday night, mid 50s north, clear skies to around 60 in the middle part, and mid 60s south. Some of you may see some showers move in late Thursday into Friday morning. But Friday, mixed clouds with showers and thunderstorms developing, relatively cool temperatures, upper 70s to low 80s. And Friday night, thunderstorms and showers become more numerous, low in the upper 50s to upper 60s elsewhere, upper 50s north, of course. Saturday and Sunday, Saturday, again, the best chance of a good soaker. Looks like upper 70s north to mid 80s elsewhere. And Saturday night, showers and thunderstorms again, low in the lower 60s north to upper 60s elsewhere. And then Sunday, warm with diminishing showers and thunderstorms, mid to upper 80s, which is still a little cool for this time of year. Sunday night, low to mid 60s. And then I forgot to change Tuesday or Independence Day to Tuesday. This is next Tuesday. Monday and Tuesday, both days, a little cool for this time of year, mid 80s to upper 80s. with pop-up showers and thunderstorms. And then during the nights, those showers and thunderstorms diminish low in the low 60s north to mid 60s elsewhere. So an optimistic forecast this time. Any questions on that?
Okay, thank you, Tony. So I am so eager to see if this forecast plays out. I tell you, the drought really has a lot of people worried. But yeah, exactly.
It does. So yeah. Hopefully those models aren't really lying to us.
Okay, so at this point, I will turn it over to Ramon as your moderator today.
All right. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Tony. Good information there. So I'll be your moderator today, and we're going to go through questions and topics. There was one question for this week that you all put up. I hope you put more questions in the either in the chat or for the next week, so we can address those questions or those concerns that you have. So we're going to go with Debbie to answer these questions about Bradford pears. And
yeah.
Debbie?
Yeah, thank you, Ramon. So this question came in about the Bradford pears, or ornamental pears in general. And they are very pretty in the spring. And I've had one when I was in Columbia. I had one in my front yard when I purchased the house. My mom's got a nice long row of them that belong to her neighbors. And so I'll be talking about both my experience when I was in Columbia and my mom's experience that I'm seeing actually take place with hers right now. Well, not hers, but the neighbors. So let's talk about the ornamental pears. So they're actually native to Asia. They originally were the calorie pear, and they were essentially brought over to Europe and then to us because they were resistant to fire blight. They then took those pears and did some breeding with them. And they came up with one type of a commercial variety, which was called the Bradford pear, which is the one that we are most familiar with. And that was supposed to be a sterile plant where it would not produce viable seed from the fruit, small, tiny fruit that it does produce. Unfortunately, some of the calorie pears were still out there, some of the other varieties that then were not sterile, that would then cross with the Bradford pears, and then those seeds became very viable. And that's what is causing some of the issues with our concerns about most of the ornamental pears being on the invasive species list in Missouri. These types of trees actually like the soils that are the Midwest, which is one of the reasons why they grow so well here. It is a very rapidly growing tree. After a couple of years, it can put on 2 to 3 feet in one season easily. It has a very large root system when the tree is mature, spreads out quite a distance from the trunk of the tree. It is a very soft wooded tree, and it does have a lot of poor branching angles. And so then they worked on the tree so that it had new varieties that the angles weren't so poor branched out on an angle. And so as you can see in this picture here, this tree, obviously it was an ice storm down in the Springfield area from Missouri State University. You can see how the ice actually cracked those larger limbs, which are quite nice sized limbs, and look at how it actually just went through that trunk and just split it. And then if we look in the neighbor's yard, that apparently is some sort of an oak. Yes, the ice is weighing it down. However, it's not really doing damage to the actual branches and breaking them off. So it's not uncommon for branches to actually break off of trees for the Bradford and the ornamental pears. It's also not uncommon to see them split when there's storms. There was a heavy snowstorm when I was in Columbia. I went out and tried to shake off as best as I could some of the snow, but at one point I heard this crack and 1/4 of my tree split and fell into the entire yard. So they are not a very good viable tree because they're soft-wooded and because of the angled branching, and they actually have a lot of tendency to lose limbs. They are not a very long-lived tree. The question that came in said they were 35 years plus. She's very lucky to have that length of years growing up some of the ornamental pears, because they do not last very long. So I would say that chances are those trees are on the decline in her yard. So what do we really need to do in paying attention to these ornamentals? They are on the invasive species list, and so we need to think about that. Hopefully we're not seeing them for sale at some of our box stores or nurseries, because they are so prolific and spread so easily across Missouri, and they're kind of taking over some of our wild areas. So these new cultivars were planted adjacent to the Bradford pears, as I mentioned. They cross-pollinated, and so therefore those fruits became viable. The fruit is very attractive for birds, and so they have a tendency to spread that seed very easily, especially in the wild. There is no natural enemies to keep this particular tree in check. The only way to stop the invasive spread of this is to actually cut down the mature tree, to stop producing the seed, and to stop planting new ornamental pear trees in general. We can cut those trees down, but they have a tendency to sprout off of the base. So make sure you use an appropriate pesticide to go in and actually kill that stump of that tree so that it will not regrow back from the base with those sprouts. So a couple of pictures here that you can see why it's become so invasive. Here is just a wild area adjacent to someone's lawn where the Bradford pears, the ornamental pears, are just taking off. Here is an open field, and you can see 1, 2, 3, I don't know how many are right there, of these Bradford pears that are just actually sprouting and probably going to take over this entire field if it's not kept in check. And then I see a lot of this, especially in my area, where the Bradford pears are kind of along the highway area, and they're just kind of taking over some of those areas right there. So think about the Bradford, the ornamental pears, if knowing that it's an invasive species, if you really should be planting those. We as Extension do not recommend that you do that. If you do have some, you might want to go ahead and cut them down and try to replace them with a different tree. Also, there are some programs in different locations across the state where if you have an invasive species, you can cut it down, take a picture, go to that nonprofit organization, show the tree being cut down, and then they will give you another replacement tree, small one, of course, for free. And it looks like someone has their hand up. If you want to go ahead and put that question in the chat box, we can go ahead and answer that for you.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Hopefully that Pamela can put that question in the chat box so we can go answer that. And very good information. We have here a lot of in the west part of Missouri, a lot of this pear, and yeah, it's becoming a problem. But anyway, we're gonna go to the next question with Tamra. There's this question that she's going to address about, there is a crack in my tree. Is it going to die? Tamra, I hope not.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, you should be able to see it about now. Okay. So yeah, the pictures that I have here are actually from where the question came from. And these are vertical cracks that they found in their tree. And we're really concerned about the health. So whenever I get a question about trees, I always ask for more information about the general health of the tree. And so this is another picture that came from the tree. You can see a nice deep or nice flare at the bottom. That's really good. A lot of trees get buried too deeply. That's not the case here. I can see at the top of the tree that it's fully leafed out. The color is pretty good. It's from a distance, so I can't see the up close tree, but the owner assured me that the leaves were very healthy and they weren't seeing a lot of drought damage or anything like that. I also asked about any branch dieback. You can see that there's a little bit, but that's actually quite normal for these trees, so it's not a big problem. All right, so some more about these vertical cracks. These look like frost cracks. These are cracks that can extend deep into the tree. It's also caused most likely by when on the side of the tree that the sun hits. And so if there is a warm winter day or a day where the sunlight is able to warm the bark and the inner wood, it can actually start to get some movement with the fluids in the tree. And then when it gets cold, as it does on many of our winter days, and especially this last winter, we had a lot of really cold days, it can actually cause a shrinkage or a contraction in the bark and in the inner wood, and that can actually cause the bark to split. And so this, you might have heard something similar on some trees, sun scald on some of our fruit trees or thin bark trees, and that is similar, but this is different. With an oak tree, you wouldn't expect to have sun scald, but you actually can have these frost cracks. So what to do if you do have these? Over time, these wounds can develop a raised area, kind of like the sun scald. It's a callus tissue that kind of tries to close over the bark. That might happen. It actually, in the winter, it can actually get bigger, and then in the summer and then on warmer days, it can actually get smaller. You just need to make sure that you keep your tree in very good health. There's nothing that you can do about the crack other than just try to make sure that your tree is healthy. So make sure that you've done your soil testing so you know that your tree is getting the appropriate nutrients for the species of tree. Make sure that you water your trees during drought. It might help for you to reduce compaction by aerating the soil. Do not pack the crack. Do not paint the crack. Those are actually really old techniques that were used on trees that actually can cause a bigger problem, because it makes it so that insects or fungi, if they're underneath that paint, they can actually cause more damage. Okay, here's an example of another tree that has some frost cracks. This is on the Michigan State University campus, and this tree is still growing. So the question of, will my tree die? No, not in the immediate future, but you do need to just make sure that the tree is okay. Just a couple other things with their tree. They also sent me this picture. This right up here, this is a pretty typical wound healing from a pruning wound. And so it's fine. There is a little bit of weepage, and that can definitely happen from these trees. Trees seal their wounds. They do not heal from wounds. Like you and I, we would heal from a wound, but trees just try and seal over the damage. They try to compartmentalize in their tree. So that's one of the reasons it's really important for you to prune properly. And I will drop a link in the chat for you to be able to know how to prune properly. They also showed some other pictures of some other things that kind of maybe looked like cracks, but these are actually typical markings of a pin oak tree or many of our oak trees. They did say that this was a pin oak, and I do just want to point out pin oaks, they are native trees, but they are found in river bottoms, and river bottoms have rich acidic soils, also plenty of access to moisture. So this is actually not a very appropriate tree for an urban area. It would be good for, if you are planting new trees, to make sure that you're planting appropriate trees for your area. And to do that, this is a really great site to keep as a reference. The treesaregood.org from ISA, or the International Society of Arborists. They have lists. If you go up here for tree owner information, they can give you lots of information about trees. And then if you do have questions about your trees, they have this resource called Find an Arborist to be able to find a certified arborist. A certified arborist has gone through some pretty rigorous testing to make sure that they are familiar with up-to-date research on trees and good tree practices. And we will have those are already in the chat for you to be able to find an arborist. Just one more tip on this. When you are looking for an arborist and you type in your city, if you only have one or two, you can also type in surrounding cities, and you'll be able to get a lot more arborists that are certified. Hope that helps. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Tamra. And Debbie has put a few links in the chat box and indicated that the questions that have been put in the chat box, we're going to address them next week. So we're going to continue to our next topic, and then Donna is going to talk about what's blooming in the garden nowadays.
Okay, just 1 second while I pull mine up. Okay. All right. One question that I get a lot of this time of year is, well, what are some good things that are blooming right now that I can maybe take a look at and see if it's something I want to add to my garden? So that's one thing I wanted to do, is just briefly touch on some different things that are blooming right now. And a lot of them are real common, and you can find them at most nurseries. And one of my favorite pictures is what's showing now. Has the milkweed with the echinacea growing behind it. And then, of course, the monarch caterpillar on it. I always love taking pictures of the caterpillars and blooms. They're just so beautiful. And one of the main ones that are blooming right now, and you can get all sorts of different varieties, is Rebecca, or what we call a black-eyed Susan. And so I have pictured here, the third one is actually the native black-eyed Susan, whereas the other three are named cultivars, Indian Summer, Cherokee Sunset. And so there's just different variations out there. I know there's one called Caramel. There's, I mean, just lots and lots of different names out there of different black-eyed Susans. But this is a type of flower that you can get many weeks out of on blooming, and you could actually plant 4 or 5 different varieties and have quite a show in your garden. And so I think it's one that we should be utilizing, whether you want to choose the native one or one of the named cultivars. I think it's a great choice. Another one that is blooming right now, of course, is echinacea, or the coneflower. We have purple coneflower, yellow coneflower. We have a lot of newer varieties that are all sorts of different shades of orange and pink and red. And then we have ones that have unique centers in them. And so just be aware, we do have a native, actually several native echinaceas. And definitely if you're a native plant lover, seek those out. But if you don't mind adding a couple cultivars to your selection, you might take a look at some of the uniquely colored ones also. Great addition to any garden, because once again, you can get 6 to 8 weeks of bloom out of these, especially if you're going through and deadheading them and encouraging more flowering to happen as it goes. Monarda is another selection that I really love because it brings in the butterflies. And that's what a lot of these do. It's timely for butterflies on all these. And so Monarda, you can get native varieties, or you can get also the named cultivars. And I really think that any of them, the Monardas, or what we call bee balm, is a great choice for any of the gardens. Now, I know the drought that we have been going through has been pretty hard on the Monarda. I've seen a lot of wilting plants, but as soon as we get those rains back, they should be coming back out. And that's one thing that's nice about, especially the natives, is they're very resilient, and you can count on them, especially with our adverse weather. Another one that is blooming quite well right now is all the milkweed species. I know that a butterfly milkweed, which is the orange one, and actually the yellow one, both those are butterfly milkweeds. They are on the downhill side of blooming. So we're not going to have those for very much longer, but the swamp milkweed and common milkweed are in full swing. Purple milkweed has already, it's done and passed. It was done about 3 weeks ago, and it has already set on its pods. I love milkweed, as you can tell. It's one of my main focuses in my gardens. I just absolutely love it. I love to point out the top left-hand picture is actually a white swamp milkweed called Ice Ballet. So I'm one of these gardeners that love to incorporate natives in my garden, but I also like those cultivars. So I'm always mixing and matching it. And I think that way we have a good palette. I always say flowers for me are eye candy. I love that popping color. And so I want a big, diverse garden. And so that's why I try to utilize all the milkweeds. Like I said, I've even ranged off into some of the different colored butterfly milkweed species, because I think they're so great to have around because they're good pollinator plants. The yellow one is called Hello Yellow. If anybody wants to seek that one out, it's easy to start from seed, or you can buy it from a lot of the nurseries right now because it's one of the varieties that they're focusing on. Another one that has really thrilled me in the past is this purple poppy mallow. And a lot of it's because it's just so tough. And that vibrant pinkish purple color it's just beautiful with other natives and really other cultivars. You can pair that with the orange butterfly weed, or even some of the yellows or some of the different shades of purple. And it's just so gorgeous. The purple poppy mallow also does a great job of being a ground cover. But if you put it out in your garden, just make sure that it does reseed. So put it where you don't mind it getting into the turf a little or spreading a little into the other beds, because if it likes where it's at, it's going to be there. But the last one I believe I have is Shasta. It's not a native, but however, it is gorgeous. And when it blooms, it's just eye-catching. It's white. It's got that big yellow center, and it blooms for that 4 to 6 weeks. You can get several different varieties out there, ones that have double petals, single petals, a frilly center, lots of different varieties. Always keep in mind though, sometimes the simpler the bloom, the better off it is for the pollinators. So that's what I always try to encourage people is mix and match, give them some of the simple plain varieties and some of the native varieties, but then you can also pair it up with some of the things that we like. So that's pretty much all that I have on what's blooming. I know there's lots of other varieties out there blooming, but these were the main ones that are easy to get at your local garden centers, and even to start from seed. And so back to you, Ramon.
So Donna, a question came into the chat box, and perhaps you and Tamra can kind of jointly answer this. Monarchs are so late coming here. Most of the feed plants are done. What other recommendations do you have for feeding the monarchs?
I think any flowers, are great when it comes to pollinators. When you talk about feeding the monarchs, there's 2 ways to feed them. You feed them with plants for the caterpillars, or you feed them in terms of the nectar for the butterflies. And so you have to have a combination of both types of feeds. I have seen a few monarchs, not a lot. I have not seen any caterpillars at this point, but I figure they're probably in the works and eventually coming. Even though the blooms are not there on the milkweeds, the plants still persist in our gardens and will be available there for the caterpillars to feed on. Tamra, do you have anything to add?
No, you are absolutely right. Monarch butterflies, they need nectar sources. It doesn't have to be monarchs, but the juveniles or caterpillars, they have to have milkweed, but they don't have to have the flowers. So it's all good. They've been doing this for a long time. They're going to be okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and the one flower that's getting ready to bloom that I absolutely love, and it is a butterfly magnet, is the liatris. So I grow, or the Eastern blazing star is also what they call it, and I also have the rough blazing star. And I find that the butterflies really love the rough blazing star over the Eastern. They prefer it, but still having the liatris, it's one that is just now starting to bloom. And so you can pick species of flowers that will extend that pollination time, or the nectar time, and allow those butterflies to continue to feed, as Tamra was saying.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Those pictures are beautiful. Anyway, we're gonna go to our next topic, and Peng Kiang is gonna talk about I see sick plants. Peng?
Yes, sir. Let me share my screen. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sharing my screen now. Let me see. Okay. As you can see, there are 3 photos in this slide, and this is an eggplant I received a couple of weeks ago. This is from a local grower. She had about 20 to 30 plants, and out of those plants, she found 2 leaves with those yellowing symptoms. So she's wondering whether this is some type of a pathogen like a bacteria or virus. So she's really concerned by the symptom because she doesn't want to distribute those plants or seeds to the other growers so that she will assist in the spreading of the disease. As you can see from the plant, there's 2 leaves. This leaf in the bottom part, you can see a little bit chlorosis. And from this leaf, you can definitely see segments of the yellowing. And there's some yellowing all over here. Remember, just like she said, there are only 2 leaves out of 40 plants. So then she's expecting me to give an answer what caused this problem. So when you look at those photos and when you hear what I just talked about our conversation, what would you think is a cause for these symptoms for this eggplant? Thank you, Jared. So you still have the photo, and now you have 20 seconds to vote for this interesting symptoms. Thank you for your voting. Some people may still need some time to think through that. Yeah, we have some factors such as genetic or chemical or virus or insect damage or bacterial infection. All right, I think I'm gonna end the poll. Let's see the answer, share the result. Okay, looks like definitely tricked you guys. If we are thinking about chemical damage, you may see more leaves get affected. For virus, this does not look like viral symptoms, which is actually very close to the answer. Insect damage, still very low percentage of infection, and also it is not a bacteria. So let me review the answer. This is actually the genetics. There's a term called a genetic mosaicism. So basically, this is regulated by genetic disorder or genetic mutation. You can see from this photo, there's some examples of this genetic issue from this leaf, flower, from the insect, and also from the sheep has a big black spot on the back. And my colleague, Sarah from the Department of Agriculture at Wisconsin actually published an article over here about the genetic mosaicism or chimeras are the cause of the plant variegation. Remember, like she said, plants with those variegation may be transient, means just like temporary and present in only one plant section, or it can be stabilized and able to be passed down to the progenies. And a chimeric plant has genetically different cells in different regions. So this is not pathogen related, and it's just a variegation issue, and it will not harm the health of the plants. Here I'm showing you more examples of this genetic issue. You saw it can shown on the flowers as well as on the fruits. So that's all I have today for the IC6 plants. I see you next week.
Thank you, Pang. That was interesting. There is a lot of chimera and different type of plants, so you wanna know what plants do that. So our next topic would be very related to our conditions from nowadays. Without rain, we have to water or not water the lawn. So that is the question that Robert is gonna talk about. Robert?
Hello. Yes. So we're going to talk about fescue in the summer, cool season grasses. It's pretty hot and pretty dry, and that impacts our lawns quite a bit. So let's take a look at if I can get the slides to change. Let's take a look at the impact of drought on our lawns. Now, I want to look at two different things here. On the left, you have a fescue lawn, and on the right, you have Bermuda grass lawn. And so we're talking about cool season grasses like on the left with the fescue. The grass on the right, Bermuda grass, is a warm season lawn, and you can tell it stays low growing and the leaves come off of a stem that creeps along the ground. And it also has seed heads that all come out from one spot, and you have many spikes coming out from one spot. In the fescue, you just have one stalk. So first thing is to identify which kind of grass you actually have in your lawn. And we're talking about cool season grasses today, like fescue or Kentucky bluegrass, but mainly fescue. And fescue, another identification characteristic is that the veins are all parallel in the leaf. And I want you to notice something else about this. This fescue was mowed with a relatively dull blade. And yes, I confess, I have not sharpened my lawnmower blade in about 1.5 years. So that's what it looks like. And that contributes to drought stress in fescue grass. When you mow with a dull blade and it leaves those points on the end of the grass are all browned out, and that's a water stress issue in fescue, and that's major. And we'll talk about why that's major in a minute. But the most important part about your fescue lawn in the summer is way down here at the ground level, at the crown. And you can see that there's several different stalks coming together right at the base, and it's encased in a brown sheath. And in that sheath, you'll see all the stalks coming in, but there's also layers of dead grass in there. Some would call it thatch, but thatch is not necessarily a problem for fescue lawns in Missouri because our thatch doesn't really build up that much. But if you have bluegrass lawns, you could have a good thatch buildup, and the thatch buildup can actually prevent moisture from getting to the roots. But with fescue, we don't have to worry much about that at all. So our recommendations for fescue in the summer is, when possible, stay off the turf grass. Okay, so now the fescue is not normally growing right now. And so when the temperature gets over 87 degrees in the summer, the fescue shuts down the photosynthesis and kicks in the photorespiration. So your fescue in the summer cannot photosynthesize very much when the temperature is over 87 degrees. Instead of pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, it's pulling oxygen out. So that means it's not growing very well. It's not producing the shoots and the roots like it should. Okay, so it's slowed down. Maybe it's not completely stopped, but it's slowed down. So let's stay off of that grass as much as we can, because it won't be able to metabolize and repair itself if you damage it. Okay, so if your grass does need to be mowed and it's fescue lawn, we want to mow it at 4.5 to 5 inches. That's going to be the highest setting on your lawnmower. If you have to mow at all, put your lawnmower on the highest setting. Normally you mow fescue at 3 to 4 inches. Okay, and what that's going to do, mowing it tall, shades that crown that we were just looking at. It shades that area and keeps it from drying out. Let's look at it again. See this crown down here and how it's at the base. You know, if you mow your grass short and scalp it, that crown is exposed to the heat and the drought, and it exacerbates the problem with the drought and the heat. So that would kill your fescue grass. This is a major problem for fescue lawn owners that mow too short. Okay, it's a great way if you're looking to kill off your fescue and have your warm season grass like Bermuda take over. What you'd want to do is scalp your fescue lawn right now and just let that Bermuda grass grow, because the Bermuda grass can still photosynthesize in the hot weather. It does a completely different metabolism than fescue. So your fescue is basically going dormant in the summer. And so you want to treat it as if it's dormant and not really mow it very much, if at all, and stay off of it. Also, while your grass is still green, you want to apply at least 1 inch of water every week while your fescue is actively growing. And you know, with the weather forecast, we're getting a few periodic showers coming in now. That 1 inch of water a week may be enough to keep your grass actively growing, but you might want to augment that if you can, or if you need to. And if you're going to irrigate, it's best to do it in the morning to avoid problems with fungus and heat and later on in the day. Okay, so when you want your fescue to go dormant, now this would be for folks who don't want to water their fescue grass all that much. They don't want to have a high water bill. Maybe they don't want to have to mow it all the time. that kind of thing, fescue will naturally go dormant in summer and you can resurrect it in the fall. Okay, so here's what you need to do to let your fescue go dormant. It's going to get brown, okay, but we don't mow it because it's gone dormant, okay? And you want to make sure that every 2 to 4 weeks, and I'm going to average that out to about every 3 weeks, you give it about a ½ an inch of water to keep the turf crowns hydrated during drought. That's the crown part. The leaves are going to turn brown, but that crown part at the base will stay alive and stay green with about a ½ an inch of water every 3 weeks. And we're probably getting that with the rains that we're having in most areas of the state. So even though your fescue is going brown or dry, it's not necessarily dying. It's just going dormant. And once it goes brown or dry and you try to bring water back to it to keep it, to get it reactivated again, remember you're fighting heat. It doesn't really produce much for energy when it's the temperature's above 87 degrees. So even though you're watering it and the temperature's above 87 degrees, it's not going to come out of that dormancy very much, if at all. And you may be wasting water and possibly introducing more problems with fungus and diseases. So the amount of water will not green up the turf at a ½ an inch of water, but it will increase its long-term survival during long dry spells. And if we do get significant rainfall, which means maybe 1 or 2 weeks of good 1.5 to 2 inch rains, your fescue should recover and begin growing. And the reason for that is because once you get that water down into the soil, remember, it can't just rain fast and run off. It actually has to soak in. And that gives the fescue grass the opportunity to transpire and cool itself down below 87 degrees. So take off your shoes and your socks and walk barefoot in your lawn and it feels cool. That's because of the transpiration of the grass, and it's cooling itself down so it can begin photosynthesizing again and producing energy. But until that happens, your fescue can go dormant in summer, and that's perfectly fine. Just keep those crowns hydrated. And let's hope your grass looks like this in a few weeks. That's all I had.
Thank you, Robert. That was good information. And it's pretty tough without a rain. So there are a few things that we can do to manage our lawn. Our next topic, actually, Tamra comes back with friend or foe.
Hi, everyone. Yep, we have another friend or foe for you today. You should be able to see it on your screen now. I am launching the poll, and you tell me, is this a friend, foe, or maybe it's neither, or maybe it depends. I'll give you a few seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. You have another second to get in the vote or two. There we go. Okay. All right. So you guys are saying, well, you're kind of all over the board. Friend, foe, neither, and it depends. Well, I am going to tell you what I said it is. And I say that this is a friend. And the reason I say that is because it is, well, it is a true bug. It is a definite predator, a predator that will take care of a lot of your caterpillar problems and a lot of the other pests that are in there. So this does have a simple metamorphosis. What you can see here is actually the nymph or the juvenile stage of the adult wheel bug. And you can actually see these in your garden right now. The nymphs and adults have a proboscis, and this picture shows it really well. You can see this is the mouth part, the proboscis, and it's rather short. There are some other bugs that look very similar, and they'll have a proboscis that actually comes a lot further down on the head and the body. But this one right here, for the true Regividae assassin bug, wheel bug, it has this short one right here. So this is a beneficial insect, and it's one that you wouldn't want to land on you, though. This mouth part right here, while it does a good job of capturing prey, it can be very painful if it pegs you. So if it does land on you, just brush it off. There's no need to do a crazy "there's a bug on me" dance. And keeping that in mind, crushing or slapping at them can actually cause them to bite. To identify this insect, you'll notice that it does have the narrow head. It has red antennae and red legs. What it looks like as an adult, you can see it here, and you can actually see it moving. It's can move pretty slowly, but it also can fly. Like I said, it is a true bug because it's in that order Hemiptera. It's Regividi, which is assassin bugs. Like I said, they're beneficial predators. They are large as adults. They can be up to 1.5 inches. They also only have one brood per year. So when you see the nymphs now, once they become adults, you aren't going to see any more nymphs this year. The adults have a wheel-like structure on the back, which gives them their name, the wheel bug. You can see it right here, and I'll show you on the next picture. You can see it a little bit better. So you can see this right here. And I have this picture here to show you that the adult females are actually quite a bit larger than the adult males. They have this wing right here in addition to their wings that they can actually fly. They're kind of a tank. And the reason for that probably is because they are so big that they look like a tasty meal for other birds or reptiles or small mammals. And so that armor protects it because they're kind of at the top of the food chain for insects, but for other animals, they are definitely prey. And then finally, one last thing, as they are true bugs and they're very closely related to stink bugs, they do have scent glands. So if you see it with another animal that looks like it might try and get it, it will sometimes send these out to let others know, hey, don't eat me. So they're armored tanks, but they also have this bioweapon of scent. So that is the wheel bug, and I hope you see them, but try not to touch them like I was, but have fun. That's it for today.
Thank you, Tamra. That's a cool insect. You gotta keep it in the garden. So we're gonna go our next topic with Debbie. She's gonna give us some information about horterminology.
Yeah, so this one came up on a Facebook page. Someone had said, hey, this is happening. Do you know what this is? And so the term for whatever the picture was vipary. It's a hard word to say, vivipary. So the answer is it a spreading growth of a plant, the overproduction of seeds within a fruit, or the development of vegetative shoots upon the reproductive organs of a plant? Kind of a hard question or hard term this time. All right, I'm seeing them all come in. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And 65% of you say C, 25% say B, and 10% say A. So I'm going to stop share. And the actual answer is, and you guys are so smart, the development of vegetative shoots upon or among the reproductive organs of a plant. So I'm giving you some samples here. So we have a green pepper, and it's not uncommon it's happened to me on numerous different occasions. I'm assuming it has for you, where you cut the pepper open and it looks like there's another little pepper starting to grow on the inside. So one of the seeds on the inside actually started growing into a pepper. I've seen this on tomatoes when I've cut into them, predominantly tomatoes, those lovely, delicious ones that we buy at the grocery store during the winter. I've seen tomatoes that have been like that. I have not seen this on strawberries. I do know that it's out there, but each of those little strawberries are trying to grow little individual plants. And then, excuse me, we have not only our fruits and vegetables, but we actually have, this is a kalanchoe, where the plant is actually having these little seeds that are on the end of the leaves. And if we take those off, they're starting to grow into a little plant, and you can see the little roots coming off of each of these individual seeds. You just grab those, put them in soil, and you've got a new plant growing right there. So it's hard for me to trick you guys. You guys are so smart. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I noticed that there were 2 questions that came into the chat box that I'm going to ask Ramon to answer as soon as I can find them. They were towards the beginning, and both had to do with tomatoes. Let's see where they are. One is, does spraying kaolin clay on tomatoes protect them from insects while the fruit ripens?
Yeah, essentially the kaolin is mostly used because it's a white powder. It's mostly used to avoid sun scald. But similar to diatomaceous earth, it can deter insect. It's not very efficient on that, but it can help in deterring insects. Yeah, diatomaceous earth is mostly used for that purpose. Kaolin is mostly used to reduce sun scald in fruit exposed to the sunlight.
And then the other tomato question is, do you recommend shade cloth for tomatoes, especially in the heat wave? If yes, how long per day should you keep the shade cloth on?
Well, if you can afford to put a structure, you can put during the day. In fact, in high tunnels, growers do put a shade, 30% shade. A lot of people say more. I don't recommend more than 30% shade during the summer when it gets too hot. If you want to put it just on those specific really hot days, that's fine. Or you can keep it for the duration of the summer. As I said, no more than 30% shade. It's up to each person, but growers do put them in the high tunnels during the summer when it's hot.
And then I've seen umbrellas in gardens. I've seen white sheets over plants in the garden when it's been really, really hot. What are your thoughts about that?
Again, if you can afford and you want to do it, it would help, definitely. Most importantly, though, is water. Keep the plants well watered, but yes, shading will help to reduce the effect of excess heat.
And then another question came in about blackberries. She asked if we would talk about that in the future, and we'll see if we can't get someone to do that next week or the following for you. Those are all the questions that I saw come in, unless I missed one.
All right, then. So we're going back to Donna.
Okay, so yes, great topics today. I know I learned a lot. I hope everybody else did. Awesome. I even plan to go back and watch a couple of the snippets here today. If you should get curious about, or if you missed maybe a live stream, or you missed a session, or you want to go back and watch snippets, you're more than welcome to. We have a page on the YouTube's website. It's MUIPM. So you just go to YouTube, up at their search engine, type in MUIPM, and that will pop up our channel. And you can watch live streams, you can watch snippets, anything you want. You can search for different topics on there. And I just always find it such valuable content. So anytime you want to do that, you can. Our next, well, if I can get my computer to go. There we go. Our next one is session is next Wednesday on July 12th, same time, noon to 1. Remember that if you have a question you want to ask, you have to go back to the registration website, and you have to register with your question, and that way it gets it to us. And you can also send pictures. And then today we had lots of links on our chat. So if you want to save that chat, you want to open up the chat box, go over to your right to the 3 little dots right down here. Click on the 3 dots, and you can save your chat from there. And it should be saved in your downloads folder. From there, just remember that you can contact any one of us throughout the week or the month. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day and enjoy this weather. And fingers crossed, hope we get some really good rain in the next couple of days. Like I said, enjoy.